Chen Na-de, the Chinese name for American Claire Lee Chennault, has been a household name in China since he became the commander of the Flying Tigers. Flying Tigers is the nickname of the first American volunteer group, or AVG, of the Chinese Air Force in 1941 to 1942. They were a group of pilots from the United States Army Air Corps, Navy, and Marine Corps, recruited under presidential authority. The group, with 3 fighter squadrons of around 30 aircraft each, was tasked with the mission of defending China against Japanese forces. More than 70 years after the cruel times, when the world marks the 70th anniversary of the victory of the World Anti-Fascist War today, granddaughter of the U.S. general shared her grandfather's story with us.
My grandfather went to China in 1937 for the first time. He was hired by Chiang Kai-shek to come over and do a survey of the Chinese Air Corps. When he got to China, I don't think he was prepared at all for the atrocities, for the many thousands and even millions of Chinese people that eventually died during the Japanese aggression. And so I think his heart immediately went out to the Chinese people at their suffering.
And the Flying Tigers, led by Chennault, became almost the only air power in China, as the country's air force was destroyed soon after the war began.
They started arriving in China in August of 1941, and he started training them on how to fly the P-40 airplane that he had purchased. But he was only able to recruit about 100 pilots and about 200 support crew. But they didn't actually see any action until December 20th of 1941. And they are credited with shooting 9 of 10 Japanese bombers down. And only one of their airplanes went down in that battle, and he landed in a rice field because he ran out of gas with just minor injuries. So that actually, what that did for the morale of the Chinese people to realize that these Americans had come to help them and that they could have such a big victory over the Japanese in their very first battle, what that did for their morale, I think is really one of the things that helped turn the tide of the war.
But in fact, the Flying Tigers had been battling in Eastern Asia with deficient resources. Even if, during the 2 years in China, they destroyed 297 enemy aircraft, including 229 in the air. 14 Flying Tigers pilots were killed in action, captured, or disappeared on combat missions. Friendship established in the same trench was solid, which in the eyes of Chennault could be a base for the two countries' future cooperation.
My grandfather, the exhibit that we have in the museum, is based on his book, Way of a Fighter, that he wrote in 1949. And the very last sentence of that book says, "It is my fondest hope that the sign of the Flying Tiger will remain aloft as long as it is needed on both shores of the Pacific to show two great peoples working toward a common goal in war and peace." So my message to the Americans and to the Chinese is we fought together as brothers and we were able to defeat the Japanese and change our history. Now we need to come together in peace and change our future.
Today, a statue stands outside a museum in the southern U.S. city of Monroe in the state of Louisiana, honoring General Chennault, one of the most beloved American generals in China. Foreigners used to help Chinese people in the most difficult war times, like General Chennault and his Flying Tigers members were still many. Some joined the battle personally, some offered logistics support to the Chinese troops, but more were just ordinary people who extended a helping hand to suffering Chinese people. With their helps, Chinese people were not alone in the brutal battle against Japan's fascist invaders.